Hi. Today we're going to talk about LiquidOffice. LiquidOffice is a tool set. It uses two components, if you will. One is a form designer that allows you to create an electronic form, an HTML form. But it's a drag and drop interface that allows you to create any form you want with any graphics, colors. All of the elements that you can place on a form are over here on the left, and I can quickly and easily create an electronic form by dragging and dropping these elements onto the form. If I double-click on an element, I get the properties for that form. So I can say, am I going to be prompting for a last name, a phone number, any kind of field. And these fields can be text, numeric, templates, anything you want. So we're going to make sure that the data being entered conforms to the type of information that you need to have entered at that point or for that form element. So you can quickly and easily create an electronic form using the form designer. Again, the output is an HTML form that the end user, all they need is a browser to complete that form. So the other half of the LiquidOffice tool set is a process studio. And the electronic forms, again, this is a drag and drop interface that quickly and easily allows you to define and create any electronic process. So the electronic forms allow an end user to interface with and define the routing for this underlying workflow. So the electronic form is the interface for some of these steps. So if I double-click on one of these steps, I can say, what e-form do I want to be the interface at this step? And based on the information that is entered on that form, we can go through business rules to route that information as a task to the next person. So think of this workflow as a task assignment capability that based on the information entered, we're going to route that information for the next person to approve, make an approval, to enter additional information, to do whatever needs to be done at that step or at that task in the workflow. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the two tools that are involved in automating any business process. Again, completely up to you in the colors, the graphics, and whatever you need to do, and the underlying workflow conforms to how your organization works. We're not going to come in and say, hey, this is how you have to do something. We're going to flow into LiquidOffice. We're going to flow into your organization and say, how do you need to get this done for your culture and the way that you get your business done. So just a real quick overview of the two tools. So now I'm going to go through a demo, and the demo that I'm going to use is a job application. And this uses this form in the process shows a lot of the value add that LiquidOffice brings to the table. So if I click on a link, again, just to initiate a workflow or a standalone form, these forms can be standalone as well if all you're wanting to do is gather data. I click on a link, and it's going to pop open that form, and this form, again, is the first step in this underlying workflow. So let's go through this form and complete it and see what we can do. So one of the things we can do is a database lookup and say, oh, this is all contained and administered through that form designer. You're not having to be a DBA or creating select statements or anything like that. We've got a nice GUI that allows you to map the fields from a database to the fields on a form. We've got lots of different ways that we can put context-sensitive help up, and we've also got these buttons up here. This is a multi-page form that allows us to navigate through the different pages so that we can break up this form to make it easier for end users, public-facing forms, for people to complete those forms. So I can go through and enter all of this information. If I'm entering a phone number, I can go through and we're going to make sure that that phone number is the correct format, and we're going to put any characters around it that needs to be, so that all your data, when you're exporting it to a back-end database or a back-end application, all the information is verified and it is correct according to the field that you're entering it in. So we're going to prompt for information. We're going to verify that information against back-end database. We're going to make sure that that information is valid as people are entering this information. For example, if we've got a driver's license, we can put a template on it that says, hey, this isn't correct. It has to be in a specific format. So you can put in your own specific templates if you want. So we compare that against the template. It's correct. The end user doesn't necessarily know that we're comparing against the template, but we know that that data is correct. So if I go to the open positions in this employment application demo, I can populate a drop-down from a column in a database, and so that if you've got values that change quite often, you don't have to go in and modify the form. You can just point a drop-down at a column in a database. And we can also, based on the value of one field, dictate the drop-down values of another field. And again, that's all part of the form designer. You're not having to be a database. We've got very tight integration with the back-end database. Let's go on to work history. And if we think about work history, we can say, hey, you know what? Here's the information that I want to collect about somebody's previous work experience. I'd say, well, I was in sales, and it was from certain date to certain date, so we have a nice little date picker. If you have a date that needs to be entered, and of course these formats are North American, European, any kind of date format that you want. But we have a capability called a dynamic table. As a form designer, I can go through and say, here's the information that I want to collect, and I'm going to allow the end user to enter as much as 5 sets of work history, or if we're putting together a form that is a purchase order form, maybe I want 55 of those repeating dynamic table cells or rows that can go through. But as a form designer, I just have to create this set of information once, and then I can dictate how many times am I going to let this information get repeated by the end user. So I'm just going to put in one of my work history. Again, that's our dynamic table capability. If I go on to education, we have dynamic display of fields. So right now I've got high school degrees checked, and I'm prompting for what high school I went to. I went to WSHS. Well, again, through the form designer, we can dictate whether a field is displayed or hidden or required based on the value of another field. So if I've got a master's, I don't really care about what high school you went to. I want to know what college you went to, and maybe what you got your master's in. Or if I got a doctorate, I'm going to add additional information. So we can dynamically display this information based on the value of another field. We can also attach documents. So if I want to attach a document, I can attach a document from the file system. We also have connectivity to document management systems. So if you're using content server or other document management systems, we can go in, navigate that document management system, and attach the document itself or a link to that document. In this case, as a job application, I'm going to go through and find my, you might want to cut this. I'm going to find my resume, which is right there. I've got a sample resume, and attach that document and finish. So now I've attached my document, and now I'm going to go into service and references, so maybe I can put in some references. But what we can also do is if we're designing a form for a tablet or for a smartphone, we can do things like, oh, I served in the military, or I'm a foreign national, or I've committed a felony, but we can use that same screen space and screen real estate so that we can make very efficient use of that. So if I go back and say, oh, I was in the Navy from this date to another date, that's great. If I'm a foreign national, I can go through and say, oh, I am from Europe, and again, based on the value of one field, we can dictate the values of the other drop-down. And again, if I've committed a felony, then I can put in this information and answer any questions that I might have. And of course, we've got complete control over this screen real estate. So now I've entered all this information, and again, if I try to submit this, it's going to say, hey, you know what, we've got some required field was found that hasn't been filled out. We're not going to let you submit that form. So this whole time, all of these different pages on this form has been, and if we go back to the workflow, has been the interface to this one step behind that is now currently running in this workflow. And as soon as I complete and fill out all the required fields, we're going to submit, go through these business rules that we've got set up, branching, and assign that next step. Now, one thing I want to point out is we have a feature called form chaining. And what that means is when I hit submit, if I've got form chaining turned on, the workflow will do a look ahead, go through this business decision, and display the next form that is, based on this decision. So each one of these different tasks here have a different e-form associated with them. And so what this allows us to do is, based on information that I'm entering, we can display different forms immediately after. Let's see what this looks like in real life. So if I'm going in and I'm, say I'm going to, excuse me, apply for something in warehouse, and I hit submit, we're going to do that form chaining, and it's going to display the warehouse form. And we can ask any questions that we want. Can you lift 75 pounds of ice? No, I can't. Let me go back to the application. And so now I've returned to this application. What's happened underneath is I hit submit, and I selected warehouse. We went through the business rules, and we displayed the form associated with this step here. Can you lift 75 pounds of ice? I said no. I'm going to loop back to this first step, and that's where I am right now, and I can make different choices on here. So now, if I go in and select engineering and hit submit, I'm going to get the engineering questions. Can you build a freezer? Well, yeah, maybe I can. And I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, I've submitted this. But what happens, and I'll hit submit, it says, hey, thank you for completing this online application. You'll be contacted shortly informing you of the status. Great. So what happened again, I displayed the page, the e-form associated with this step. I said, yes, I accept it. We displayed the form saying thank you. And as soon as I hit that submit on that thank you, we exported that data to a back-end database. And we can export the field level basis, right? So I can say I want these 5 fields to go to one database. I want all the fields to go to another database. We're going to export that form to a content server or a document management system. And all that happens automatically. Another thing that happens is we can send an automatic email out. So we've got something called field substitution, where we take the value that was entered in the email field, and we're going to send an email to that, and we can customize that email. It says, hey, your job application for engineering has been received. Dear Mike, we have received your application. And this could be HTML. I've just stripped out the HTML so it's a little bit more readable. But the e-form or the email is used so that you can automatically send status with the appropriate information embedded in that email so that the people that need to know about that status, maybe the originator of the process, the owner of the process, whoever needs to know about that a process has reached a certain gate, they can be automatically notified. So we automatically sent the email, and now we're at this review step. So this review step has been assigned to an individual. In this case, we assigned it to a specific individual, Bob Brown. Maybe Bob Brown gets to review all loan applications. We could also assign that to a work queue, which is a group inbox. Maybe we assign that to human resources so that anybody in human resources can act on that task. So right now, this Bob Brown has received a email, and let me just bring up my Outlook. And that email is going to have a notification that says, hey, you've received a new task has been assigned to you. You've got a workflow is waiting on your input to complete this task so that it can be moved on to the next step. And if we go down and look at Bob Brown, we can see that here is this job application for John Doe. We've got a notification, and that link has or the email has a link in it. And if I click on that link, it's going to open up that e-form for that task. So I can act on that task directly from within Outlook. So the other way, that's one way that you can access your tasks if you just want to do everything via email and from Outlook. The other way is we have a application, or it comes with the product, called the LiquidOffice portal. I'll wait for this to spin up. And the portal is a landing page that allows you to see all of the tasks that you have access to. So right now I'm logged in as Mike Finney, and I can see that under my assignments I've got 2 tasks that are waiting for me. Well, like I said, Bob Brown had that task assigned to them. So I'm going to log out and log in as Bob Brown. And we support single sign-on as well. So you don't have to log in every time. So here we can see I've got a task that's been assigned to me, job application for Doe, John. And any other tasks that I would have access to are going to be displayed here as well. We can also take a look down at the bottom. I can see attachments. Here's the resume that was attached to that process. And I can also see the process state. So there's 2 different formats of this process state that we display. And they're both using some color coding of these the dots. So we can see each task, when it was started and when it was ended, and who completed that task. And we also have anonymous forms in Access, so you don't have to log in or be a LiquidOffice user in order to complete a form, initiate a process, any of that. We have anonymous access. So anybody, you can put these forms out on your intranet, your extranet. It's just a link behind a link on a web page. You click on that link, and we're going to display that form and start the process automatically. But we've got color coding. I can see the start and end date of each of these tasks when they started. And if I go down, I can see, oh, there's going to be a green dot, and that shows me that when that task was assigned and who we're currently waiting on for that task to be completed. And if we keep going down, we can see the blue dots, and these are still viable steps within that workflow. We also have a graphical interface to this workflow. So again, I can follow the color coding. I can follow the black dots to see which was the current path and all of the steps that have been completed. And I can see right now we're currently waiting on this review step, and all of these future steps are still viable. So to complete this task, I can double-click on this. Double-clicking on this link is the same as clicking on the link in that email that was sent to me to notify me that I have a task waiting for me. So I'm going to double-click on this. And here we can see this is a different form. It's got all of that same information, but I've just put all of this information on one form because, you know, the first form was customer-facing. We're going to put lots of instructions and graphics and things on it. But now I've had a task assigned to me. I'm in the back office. I want to see all the information that I can so that I can make my decisions about what needs to be done. And at this point, all of these fields are read-only. So I can automatically turn on a read-only that says, hey, anything that was entered in previously, me as being somebody in the back office as reviewing and making decisions, I'm not going to be able to change any of that information. So we can go through, we can say, oh, we can see that an attachment has been added. Let me go ahead and review that resume so we can review that document side by side. I can look at it and say, yep, looks like a good resume. Let me close that. Say, yeah, let me add some comments about this person. Looks like a good fit. And I can add my comments. So this sort of goes to the idea of this being a tool set, and that any of the comments that I entered in here, I can enter those comments. When I hit add my comments, we're putting in a date, time stamp, who added those comments, and the comments themselves. And this is a read-only field. So what we're doing is we're creating a whole audit trail of all the comments that were entered that at this point it cannot be modified. Those whatever comments are added are going to be part of this process till the end of time. Now, if I had decided to look at that, I looked at this applicant and I said they're not a fit, and say, oh, you could say this person is they're not a fit, and I have to sign off on that. So we have an electronic signature capability. And signing this form will submit the form. Continue? No, I don't want to. Actually, what I want to do is I want to review or approve this person for a phone interview. So me as somebody in HR, I've looked at the resume. I can say, you know what? I know who needs to review this person. And I know that it is Mike Finney. So, and I can go in and search all of the LiquidOffice users and say, oh, here's the person that I want to view and look at this resume next. So again, if we look in the back end about what's going on, I'm currently at this review step. I've reviewed the resume. I've added my comments, and I've said, hey, I want Mike Finney to review this next step. So what I can do is I can actually change the approval of this step dynamically. So I can say, even though this has been defined as part of this workflow process, we can actually modify ourselves and say, hey, nope, I want this. I'm going to change this step so that somebody else gets this and reviews this step. So lots of ways for us to review, assign, and modify these workflows and the forms and make sure that the task is being assigned to the right person. And it's all automated. All somebody is doing is going through and filling out the form. The technology underneath is making sure that the routing is correct, the data is correct, and all of the information is flowing. And if people aren't responding to their workflow, we have a notification system that says, hey, this workflow step is late. You need to, here's a reminder to do it, or maybe reassign that to their boss or send their boss an email or something to that effect. At the end of the day, if this person gets approved, they come in, they do a phone interview. At the end of the day, we're going to export this data to a database. We can take that form with all of its current values, convert it to a flattened PDF, and stick it into a document management system with some of the fields like their name or social security number or whatever as metadata attached to that document. But we can automatically export that data and place it wherever we need. So that's a high-level overview of LiquidOffice. There's a lot of other features, obviously, that come with the product, but I just wanted to give you a high-end overview of what LiquidOffice is. It's a tool set that allows you to automate any business process. You have complete control over the interface, the graphics, how that e-form works, who can fill out that e-form, and how the data from that e-form gets routed around. What is the process that you need to create for your culture to fit in to say, this is how this process works in our organization. Let's automate it. So that's LiquidOffice. I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you very much. Have a good day.